Welcome home, brave heroes. I'm Ash, this is HEROQUEST, and the moment that I know I've been waiting for has finally arrived. I have my hands on the latest HEROQUEST expansion, Against the Ogre Horde. This has been all the rage and all the buzz, especially here on the channel. And today, I'd like to not only unveil the contents of this box, but compare them with the contents of mine own classic version. Yes, Against the Ogre Horde is a remake or remaster of the old Against the Ogre Horde, which was formerly UK, EU, and Australia only. This didn't make it to the States, and it probably goes without saying that it didn't make it to Japan either. I wanted to compare the covers of the games before anything else. We have very much an homage to the original picture in our artwork, if I could only get it to stop reflecting on the lights pointing at the boxes. We have a bit of a vast improvement in how the artist was essentially reading the room, however. In this box, we have an assortment of ogres who are all ready for battle. They are shouting war cries. They are advancing on whoever their enemy is. They are coming out of what looks like a tower. There's a bit of a hint of city or society of some kind in the background. The Ogre Lord is clearly marked by his ferocious stature and crown. If we take a look at the old box, the styles are distinctly different, with this looking a lot more like a new wave punk metal band from the 80s or early 90s. And a lot of the ogres really had more of this look. Most of the ogres really from this time period, Games Workshop style in general, looked like this one right here. Maybe sometimes this one if you were lucky, but you could have told me that these were orcs, this was a goblin, and this was the only ogre on the box, and I probably would have believed you. Anyway, the same imagery, we get a lot bigger shot here of the background and the sort of implied visual lore back here. These ogres are said to have ferocious appetites. They will eat entire people, and I'm not sure that I can believe that from the artwork. Definitely from the sculpts, though. However, the new art does convey that information quite well. So, without further ado, let's take a look at the other sides of the box and our New Zealand and Australia and UK customer service contact addresses and barcode for this US release. I know that this was pretty much a simultaneous worldwide release as far as official outlets and channels go. This should be available pretty much anywhere HEROQUEST is sold. And I know for sure in the US you can get this on Pulse or on Amazon. In the UK you should absolutely be able to get it on Pulse at the very least. That's not listing off exhaustively all of the third-party retailers at all. We have a ton of miniatures, but we've seen the back of this box many times now, and for a little while it was all we had to go on when looking for information about this. So let's open the box. We always check underneath the lid just to see that HEROQUEST is still the only game system and board game that I've ever had so far that has anything under the lid. The first thing we are met with visually is this stunning arena tile, which nearly takes up the entire box, width and length. This is, without a doubt, the largest tile that HEROQUEST has ever had by far. And it is the tile on which we will be playing all of the arena skirmishes, some of which are part of the quests in the quest book. It is two-sided. We have what looks like a daytime side and a nighttime side, or perhaps you can call this the outdoor arena and the prison of sorts, the prison arena, the underground arena. This is just my own sort of naming scheme for it right now. It's not at all officially what they're called. It is the arena tile, however. Then we have our tokens, our trophy tokens. The adventurers can move over these and pick these up during an arena battle and pick up health potions, as well as the ability to augment their own attacks and defenses during arena combat, making the arena combat system actually well thought out and just a piece of mechanical goodness that I'm so glad Avalon Hill had the bravery to develop for this expansion. We have our companion app flyer, and then we have the original Ogre Horde tiles, the Sun Room and the Pier 1 Imports Rug Room. That's not what it's called, but that's what I'm going to call it, and so therefore that's what it should be called. I'd like to do a quick comparison of the tiles after breaking these two originals out just to kind of show you that Avalon Hill was very, very true to the artwork. We can see each individual ceramic tile mosaiced, is that a word? To come together and create this magnificent piece of art. Lore-wise, this looks like something that an ogre would not have the time, patience, or nimbleness to do. So perhaps they commissioned some elves. The old tile is quite a bit brighter, but I have no problem with a slightly darker tile. We are supposed to be in a dungeon, and these muted colors, in my opinion, work a little bit better for the context. On the reverse side, we've got the carpeted room, which means that you could not use this tile 2 times in one quest. However, the Avalon Hill version fixes that. We are able to use really cool tiles now without having to worry about the limits of duplicity. And again, the new artwork is very faithful to the old. We have a slightly different palette of colors, maybe a little bit more blurriness in the artwork itself. The old image seems to be crisper on the left, but besides that, very faithful. Still looks really good, and on the table that far away, you probably won't get a lot of people who notice. On the reverse side of both the original tiles, we have arena starting room tiles, and we have a challenger room tile as well as a defender room tile, and you can see the imprints of crossed swords in the ground. Very creative, very clever. This was not a tile that came with the original Against the Ogre Horde, nor was the arena tile either side, and the challenger tile has this motif that we have seen teased ever since we saw the arena diorama displayed at Gen Con in 2023. This sort of outline of what looks to be a gargoyle face, a lion's face, something of that nature. This is a very feline-esque face, but there are no ears attached to it. It's really creepy and also kind of cute, innocent looking. We'll see this pop up in different places as we get through this expansion. Now, to set aside the 6-pack for just a minute, we have now unboxed the entirety of the arena and how it is supposed to be set up on your table. Actually, we haven't. There are still the doors to consider, but this is more or less going to be the setup for your arena. And the arena is something we'll go over a little bit better in detail later, but it is something that it's really, really cool in this expansion, and it is a great addition to this expansion. We have one more tile that is a remake of an older tile, this time the sort of crevice tile, and I actually like the new tile better in every way. The artwork is actually crisper. The coloration makes a lot more sense. The old tile is an original, but it looks like the art was really paid attention to. You can see each and every little stone, every piece of grain in the stone that makes up its surface. On the reverse, we have a room. I know, very, very descriptive, Ash. This room is mainly just for flavor. You see weapons on the ground. The sword is actually broken. We had blood in the old one. We have blood in the new one. No punches were pulled. No holds were barred. No quarter was given. Our flail looks a lot more deadly than the old flail, although I really think that either of these flails would be perfectly dangerous and lethal in any of the HEROQuest characters' hands. Finally, we have our 1x1 tiles to punch out. We have pits of darkness, pits that are especially deep, and they are mechanically different than regular pits in that the hero is now going to be falling 30 feet to their doom. If they fall into one of these pits, then they'll actually take more damage depending on whether they are wearing heavy armor. If they're wearing no armor, then they'll take the least amount of damage. If they are wearing chainmail, they'll take more damage. If they're wearing plate mail, they'll take the full amount of damage. And we have some of these hourglass tiles on the reverse side. You won't use these at the same time. We've got our secret doors, and I love that they come in a left and right-handed version. It makes me wonder if we'll see these kind of be discovered in a room at the same time to indicate double wide doors during the quests. We have weaponry as well as another hourglass tile on the reverse, and we have our fallen rock tiles to help us point out what corridors are inaccessible and or they will be traps. On the reverse side, more hourglass tiles. Our last tile sheet for Against the Ogre Horde features the outdoor tile. This is an enormous tile. It's not quite as big as the arena, but it is one of the largest tiles that exists for HEROQuest, period. It takes up a corner of the board and kind of represents the heroes discovering Well, I'll go ahead and put a spoiler warning here now. We are actually going to, from this point forward, be getting into some spoilerific territory for Against the Ogre Horde. I will be looking at the first 3 quests in the quest book, and I will be talking about some of the usage for some of the elements that are in this expansion. So, these will be minor spoilers, and the first 3 quests are the ones that are brand new, not included in the original Against the Ogre Horde, which had a total of 7 group quests. This Avalon Hills version has all 10 being group quests, with the first 3 being new additions and the last 7 being renditions, we'll say, of the old version. But this outdoor tile, of course, had an old version as well. And again, extremely faithful to the artwork, extremely attentive to detail. I actually love the artwork on the old one. I think the artwork on the new one suits the new game's aesthetic just fine. Everything was given a great amount of respect, and it makes me really happy that Avalon Hill was able to pay that kind of respect. This tile has an opposite side. This giant fire pit, again, really like the look of the new one. I have no problem with the look of the old one. I love the aesthetic of the old with the old assets and the old HEROQuest. The new one fits just fine with the new. I think this represents what it's supposed to be very well. This is a very dangerous room. But I was going on to say that this tile represents the outdoors. You will be on this tile when you discover the stronghold of the ogres, and you will eventually get to this tile when you are nearing the end of the campaign. So it will be used a couple of times, and in your own homebrew quests, you finally have some solid outdoor to put your heroes on for whatever reason. We get more of these 1x1 tiles, this time secret doors and 3 more trophy tiles. On the reverse, we have the sort of counterattack that can occur during arena battle, another health potion, and 2 more packs of gear. With all of our tiles out of the way, it's time to get into the contents. We've got a lovely protective cardboard sheet here, which we can go ahead and set to the side, and then we get to the meat of this expansion. The quest book is, as is standard, covered in this fancy protective paper, and we have the artwork of the Ogre Lord of the Degrushed clan. This is wonderful, and it is significantly thicker than the old to explain the new arena rules and all of the new mechanics, and also give you the first 3 quests, which are brand new content for HEROQuest. Next up, we have our ogres and our new additions, which include versions of orcs, goblins, and skeletons, and 2 new heroes. Well, 1 new hero, but 2 versions of that hero, and 1 animal companion. You can't see everything when you first open the box because it is a double tray. Included with our character miniatures are some really fun furniture miniatures. I guess doors don't quite count as furniture, but let's continue. Before we move on, I just want to show off the old ogre sculpts. These were the sculpts that came with my original UK Against the Ogre Horde. They were cast in a very dull red. I don't even think the camera is accurately picking up the shade of red that they are, but they are sort of a drab red, a little bit more of a rust than the brighter red of our heroes. And actually, this was the same red that the heroes that were included with my UK edition of HEROQuest Advanced Quest were cast in. So the old ogres, this was Games Workshop's bog standard ogre at the time. They've got clothing that seems to be bursting from their massive tummies, full from eating, which is all they do. That's how you gain their alliance. You just promise them food, and they eat and eat and eat some more. That's the ogre. They are on a single wide base. They were only supposed to take up 1 tile despite their massive size. And this was also the same sculpt that came with the US exclusive expansion, Mage of the Mirror, otherwise known as the Elf Quest Pack. These ogre warriors, which had different stats in the Mage of the Mirror than their UK counterparts, were a lovely shade of gray, the same gray that we see now everywhere for unpainted minis. Both of these expansions come with 4 of these sculpts of ogre. But that's not all it came with. We also had access to the Ogre Chieftain. This is a very authoritative warrior of an ogre, a bit stronger than the Ogre Warrior. The Ogre Champion, which compares but pales in comparison to the Ogre Chieftain. The Ogre Champion actually has the exact same stats as the Ogre Warrior, with the difference being that their body points are both variable, so at any given time, one could be stronger than the other, depending on who you run into and in what order. And then the Ogre Lord, which actually has the exact same stats as the Ogre Chieftain, but 5 mind points instead of 2 mind points, and might change depending on whether you're running into a named character in the quest book. This band of rapscallions makes up the monsters that came with the original game. Now it's time to show you the monsters that come with the new version of the game. Just a quick comparison shot of all of the monster ogres that come with both games. It's no contest. The new versions of these enemies are enormous compared to the old. They are way, way more threatening, especially the non-ogre warriors who now take up 2 tiles because of their size instead of just 1. Indeed, the Ogre Chieftain, the Ogre Champion, and the Ogre Lord are just huge. We'll get a closer look at those sculpts. First up, the Ogre Warriors. We get 2 of 2 different sculpts, and these are slightly different sculpts than the ones that come with Mage of the Mirror. Well, okay, they're very different sculpts, but they're slightly different designs than the one that came with Mage of the Mirror. This is the Ogre from Mage of the Mirror's contemporary version, and he looks really cool. I actually really like the design of this Ogre. Very warlike. The mohawk into a braid is very warrior-like. The weapon makes sense. These ogres, I suppose they're dressed more for their homeland. We are visiting their territory in this expansion, so it makes sense that their style of dress is a little bit different. Their style of hair is a little bit different, but still visually congruent, and they're all really cool. I don't know, something about this one does seem to have grown on me though. This one's more of a warrior in my eyes. You get 2 of each of the 2 sculpts so that you've got some visual distinction to mix it up on the board, even if you leave them unpainted. We've got a lot of really tiny skulls around the hammerhead of this ogre's weapon. Very tiny. Makes me think of halflings, makes me feel kind of bad. Skulls hanging from the belt of the other sculpt, as well as a bunch of last-minute, last-chance weapons. Awesome poses, and I can't wait to see what kind of paint jobs people give these sculpts. Okay, I've been saying Ogre Chieftain, but that's the old nomenclature for this character. This is actually the Ogre Commander, and a commanding presence he certainly has, with lots of different bones hanging off his person, very little armor just to show that he's not afraid to flex his muscles and show the skin. Not afraid of running into battle without heavy plate or anything like that. Very confident in his abilities to lead a command. Loving the blade that is tied to his wrist, and really like the broken horn of his headpiece. A much larger skull adorns his shoulder as a pauldron. Don't know what kind of beast that is. And lots of teeth that may or may not be drinking horns. The Ogre Champion is someone that I can see us fighting in the arena many times. This ogre actually seems to have his hand replaced with a blade that actually looks a lot like a head knife, but an oversized one. He's got a dragon skull emblazoned onto his WWE Champion's belt, but I'm going to call it now. That's not a real skull. Somebody just molded that. Not that he couldn't probably take down a dragon of that size, but, you know, I bet he didn't. And then his spiked buckler, if he parries with that, you're going to be in trouble, and also flying 30 feet across the arena. Really like the headgear on this one, and the choice that they made to give him this extended lower jaw. He's just roaring. He's just very threatening. You see him on the board, you know he screams boss monster. The Ogre Lord has every bit of a commanding presence as he should. He has a scarred, snarling face. The details in the sculpt here are wonderful. He has his ogre crown. The ears are a dead giveaway as to his species. He has brilliant pauldrons, including this lovely molded sort of wolf head. It looks royal. It looks brilliant. He's got some spots on his arm there. He has this awesome fur pelt that PETA would definitely not approve of, as well as plenty of the same looking material in his belt. Also lots of skulls there. Very fun sculpt choice. They decided to just kind of like extend the model of the front of this all the way between his legs to the back. I think they could have probably saved on it if they concaved a little bit. They didn't have to mold all the way through there. All of these guys are barefoot, and they all have high scores on WikiFeet. All right, and we also have a goblet from which he is going to drink the blood of his enemies, or grog. I mean, actually not grog. These guys probably drink something much stronger than that. Ogre whiskey. But enough about that. Let's take a look at these other minis. And the first thing I want to look at is the doors. These are the arena doors. They're called the double doors. You get 2 of them. There are torches molded on one side to light up the battle arena. There are shield and twisting vine on the other. These are going to offer a lot of painting opportunities. The main door, as you may or may not have noticed, actually slides open. So you have an open state for this door as well as a closed state. I can't wait to see the home brew that people are going to be using this for. I myself love to use 2 doors placed side by side, and when one is open, the other one opens as well. That's my double door. Now I can finally have something that visually represents a real double door in my dungeons. I love that you can see through it. I just love that they made this a 2-part sculpt, and this does come out all the way, so you can place this down and remove the door entirely, or you can get it to catch kind of incidentally and try to just keep it suspended. Those of you who are crafty might decide to put in something in there that will let you adjust this so that it can be half open or 3/4 open. Perhaps it will have different open states, but on its own, it's pretty easy to keep closed. We just give that a little bit of a bend, and then you can set that in there. And it shouldn't fall, but with enough vibration on the table and enough rolling of the dice and stuff, it might fall into place. But still, this is super, super awesome. Made me really excited when I realized you could open it. You get 2 of those. Presumably, one will sit on the challenger's side of the arena, and the other one will sit on the defender's side. Don't know if they're used in the quests yet, beyond the arena sections of those quests. We get 2 of 2 new sculpts of goblins, and these are called archer goblins. Although they aren't using bows and arrows like typical archers would, these goblins are still outfitted with ranged weaponry, and their sculpts are distinct to make sure that you notice that. One is getting ready to throw the goblin edition of a Molotov cocktail, a Gobletov cocktail. The male sculpt actually has a covering over one of his eyes and a boomerang. Perhaps he failed to catch the boomerang during training and earned his stripes there. But this very distinct sculpt is really cool. Love that they made him battle damaged. He's got a token of Zargon there on his back, hanging off his belt. He's going to be a lot of fun to paint. These goblins and all of these versions of the ranged monsters in this expansion can be used in place of regular monsters at Zargon's discretion, not just because that's the way it should be anyway, but because it specifically gets called out in the expansion quest book that Zargon can simply replace whatever normal monster with an archer version of that monster to really spice things up. That was exciting to see. We get a quantity of 2 male and 2 female orcs with great bows. These bows are some of my favorite weapons in any video game. I love great bows in RPGs. I specifically love using one in Elden Ring, but that's neither here nor there. These guys can be placed on the board to replace regular orcs, and then you know that there is a ranger on the team. The great bows are sculpted amazingly. I love how they look. I love the giant arrows that these guys are able to pull back, knock and draw, and aim with precision because of their great brute strength. I love that they have backup weapons, so if you get close to them, they can still strike at you with something melee. The orcs have lovely looking sword sheaths. And yes, that is a sword sheath and not a quiver. These guys have no quivers to speak of anywhere, but it doesn't matter. When you have any sort of missile weapon in HeroQuest, you have unlimited ammo, so you really don't have a need for a quiver. I love the female sculpt here. This is probably my second favorite female orc sculpt, not counting the sculpts from HEROQUEST. Then this falls somewhere in like 10th place. And then we get 3 of the same sculpt of the archer skeleton, and these are still enormous bows that would take a lot of strength, but the archer skeleton's got it. He has not got any problem wielding this weapon whatsoever. I love the design choices for this character. Love the chain, what is that? Chain coif? Whatever it is, the chainmail that goes around the head. The bow itself is constructed in a really cool way. Its style, its aesthetic is different from the great bow that the orcs are wielding. It just looks something that's more suitable for perhaps a human or an undead human to be wielding. And no, we don't know for certain that this is an undead human, but I like to think that they are. And I did say he, obviously, the skeletons don't seem to have a presented gender. These could definitely be female skeletons for all I know. All I know is that I love them and I'm going to use them every single chance I get from now on. These have permanently changed the way that I play HEROQUEST. By the way, at the bottom of the base of every miniature, you will get an identifier. So this is identified as Ogre 10, Ogre 6, and Ogre 7 for the 2 versions of the orcs, Ogre 2 for this version of the Ogre Warrior, and so on. Moving on, we have 4 of these stone doors. Now I'd like to show you what the old version looked like. We had stone from a tile sheet that we would punch out, and then this would slide into one of the existing plastic HEROQUEST door bases. Ah, nostalgia. The new door is a brand new sculpt. It has, again, this very silly looking motif of this creature, this really happy earless lion sort of thing, kind of creepy in a way. On both sides. The stone door, when placed on the board, is a door that can only be opened by a hero who rolls 2 skulls when they go to attack it. This is really just a test of strength. And if the hero is unable to roll 2 dice to begin with, such as in the case of the wizard and a few other heroes, in fact, then it would be impossible for them to actually open the door. They have no chance of doing so, and it calls this out in the book, Rules as Written, because you have to use their base value on their card, not their unarmed value, not their value augmented by spells, magic, abilities of any kind, but the base value on the card of attack. So with the wizard having only 1 attack die, it is impossible for the wizard to open a door of the stone variety. They simply don't have the strength. You can, of course, homebrew this as Zargon. You can have them use spells. The wizard can use Pass-Through Rock to get on the other side of the first stone door and then land into a room that has a stone door on both sides and then kind of gives up because they are trapped now. The Druid is another hero that will have trouble opening these doors, and it is the Druid that we'll be looking at very shortly after this last piece of furniture, and this is the Ogre Throne. The original Ogre Throne, which does feature that silly little creature's face as a piece of motif right on here. So this wasn't a new thing that Avalon Hill made. This was actually something that they are paying homage to and keeping consistent. Was detailed on the back. However, we only got a tile. We only got a single tile with the original Against the Ogre Horde, and we were meant to take that tile, kind of bend it into place and shove it between the original throne plastic pieces. So by doing so, we would make our Ogre Throne. And you know, this was fine because you could actually make the ogre sit on their throne. They would actually balance correctly and stay. Well, maybe not. I mean, you could have him lounge. You could have him lay back and enjoy being a king. It's good to be king, you know. That's the correct way to sit in the throne. This, however, this chonky boy's cake is not fitting in this throne. Even if you could get him to sit, it's just too wide. But you know what? This conveys enough. This here conveys enough. He gets up from his throne. He stands to command his army. Get there, fellow de Groost. I command thee. Kneel. Then we shall eat. All right, enough of that. The last minis to take out of here are the controversial ones. These are the Druids. And boy, oh boy, the Druids. You know, I wasn't quite sure what to make of this miniature until I saw one of the paint jobs, the first paint job that I saw on the Old Inn, the Facebook group. The person did an amazing job painting their Druid mini. And when I say mini, I'm referring to the miniature, not that it's a mini Druid, although it is very much a mini Druid. Because here is the original Mythic tier sculpt of the Druid, and here is our new Druid. The new Druid actually has a lot of cool additions. I know there were people who weren't a fan necessarily of the old Druid. I think that she's pretty. I think that her art on her card is quite pretty. I think that it is a pretty sculpt. It is a good sculpt. It may not be as commanding, as heroic as the new sculpt. The new sculpt looks like this is a well-seasoned adventurer who is also a Druid. The weapon of choice actually looks a lot more thematic. Pretty much everything about it is a little bit more dynamic. I don't think that there's anything wrong with the old Druid. I do not know at this time why we did not get this Druid. We could have gotten a single hero with this expansion and one animal companion, and I don't think anybody would have been rattled because of it. It does kind of now make me go back on some of the thoughts that I had and make me think that this possibly could be included with a Crypt of Perpetual Darkness, but I don't see another version of the same hero coming out, so I'm just not sure why. Let me know what you think in the comments below. We have male and female versions of this druid. And the male looking druid, he looks really awesome. He's grizzled. His facial hair looks really cool. He's aged, and we really needed more of these grizzled, aged warriors in HEROQuest to kind of represent those who have been around the block, those who have been fighting the forces of dread for a hot minute now. I'm very proud of this particular sculpt. I think that this is a great hero sculpt. Actually, both of these. I think that these are both great. Now, there are people asking, are these halflings? And I did have a little bit of doubt myself. I wondered if maybe they could have been dwarves. Well, we don't have any official notes right now released to the public, but I think if you wanted to surmise that they possibly could be dwarfs, I think the biology is a little bit too different between the dwarf examples that we have now. We have a male and female dwarf now. The hands, the feet, the legs, overall the dwarves are just much chunkier. So I don't think that there was any doubt in anyone's mind that these were halflings. But just for those of you who wanted to double check the dwarfiness of them, and again, this time comparing our male dwarf with our male halfling. Huge difference in the size of foot. Avalon Hill have shown that they're pretty consistent with their species and their race's features coming through in their sculpts. Here's just an example of the two halfling females. Together, you can see that their faces are pretty close in scale. Their body proportions are not too far from one another, and plus, this druid has been through some stuff. They'd be a lot stronger in the harsh environment near the ogres, or the style of their dress would suggest that they're in the same environment as the ogres, and if that's true, then they're possibly having to fight for their lives somewhat on the daily, or at least be prepared to do so. The last miniature to pull out of here is our animal companion. This is a wolf. The wolf looks great. There's not much really to say about it other than it's just a great sculpt of a wolf. It is snarling. It's got its mane all floofed up. It's very textured. There's a lot of fur on this wolf. This is Ogre 13. Ogre 13, and it's red, so it's kind of like Red 13 from Final Fantasy VII. Never mind. We've got to get into one more thing this expansion, and that is the reveal of the cards. So for this deck of Against the Ogre Horde cards, we have a lot of different cards to add to our loadout, and a lot of beautiful illustrations and cool new stats to look at. Here is our Druid. The attack, defend, body, and mind remains the same, as well as the movement of 2 red dice and the starting weapon of the dagger. There's our female Druid's art. She looks amazing. They both look really, really cool. I love the art for them. And the text, of course, is, "You are the Druid, a woodland guardian and potent healer. You are a powerful physical combatant when under the effects of your shapeshift spell, but can be weakened when your resources are depleted. You do not wear metal armor." The wolf, who is an animal companion in this expansion and not a standalone hero, has 10 movement squares, 3 attack dice, may attack diagonally, 2 defend dice, 5 body points, and 1 mind point. The wolf is a faithful animal ally. Before a hero begins a quest with fewer than 4 hero players, they may recruit an animal ally to accompany them. The wolf is bonded to one hero and takes their turn immediately following the turn of their allied hero. They can move, attack, and defend, but cannot perform other actions, use potions, or open doors. And exclusive to this version of Against the Ogre Horde, and this expansion in general, is the Ogre Mercenary. At the cost of 150 gold coins, you can actually hire an Ogre Mercenary with 8 movement squares, 4 attack, 4 body, 4 mind, and 1 4 body, 4 defend, 4 attack, and 1 mind point, And this is actually different stat-wise than the Ogre Warrior. So the Ogre Mercenary has its own implied sculpt out of the 4 Ogre sculpts that you get, and the Ogre Warrior has its own distinctly different implied sculpt, with its symbol being right here and looking a lot more like the ogre on the right, the Ogre Mercenary here. But that's okay. The thing that I think is a bit odd is that in the original campaign, you had more than 2 Ogre Warriors per map. So you'll have to place your ogres such that all 4 of your enemy ogres, if there are 4 present, are all on the map at the same time. And then if you had an Ogre Mercenary, you might have to sub this one out for a different miniature to represent them. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how that was supposed to play out. I think they should have given us, or could have given us perhaps, a fifth ogre if they were going to include this mechanic with the game. But generally, you will not find more than 1 or 2 ogres per room, and it's likely that you're going to defeat them completely before you move on to the next room, because opening doors to attract more ogres is just generally a terrible idea. Still, it's odd that we could be put in that situation. The ogre champion, ogre lord, and ogre commander have their own enemy icons as well, and they are double wide. The original ogres were only single tile wide, so it'll be interesting to see how the mechanical differences shift or change at all depending on who can now fit where on the board. Just to give a little bit of comparison, here are the old stats for the ogre champion. Still a movement of 6 spaces, attack of 5. The old ogre champion actually got an additional defend die, had the same mind points, and their bodies were variable depending on where they were at on the variable body point tracker, which I won't go into in this video. The ogre warrior had 6, 5, 5, so an additional defend die for his older form as well, and variable body points. The ogre chieftain, who was replaced by the ogre commander, 4, 6, 6, variable and 2, is now 4, 6, 5, 6, and 2. So the body points are going to be more than any of the ogre's body points that they could possibly have had back in the old expansion, but with 1 fewer defend die. And then the ogre lord, with a movement of 4, an attack and defense of 6, which was kept the same, a mind of 5, which was kept the same, and body points being variable. The ogre lord has 10 body points. I've heard that this may or may not be attributed to my disappointment that we didn't get 10 body point ogres in Mage of the Mirror, and while I'm happy to receive any sort of acknowledgement, especially at any official level, that would be a true honor indeed, this is still a disappointment since the original ogre lord did not have 10 body points at all in the original expansion. They all had variable body points. Anyways, I want to thank Avalon Hill for the amazing characters here, the amazing monsters, the amazing sculpts. I'm sure these were play tested thoroughly and found to be very fun, and fun is the goal. So whatever the changes are, they were made with the best of intentions. Let's look at the monster cards now. These monsters have the exact same stats as their melee counterparts, except they now have attack dice 3 against non-adjacent targets. The Orc Archer rolls 1 attack die against adjacent targets. The icon is replaced with the same icon, but with an arrow underneath, which I really love. The Goblin Archer, I did not see this artwork. I did not see this artwork before opening this box. She is lovely. And I mean, whoever designed this awesome goblin lady throwing this bomb, thank you so much. This is so, so cool. We have an awesome goblin lady artwork official. That is so nice to see. I love that. Thank you. Again, the goblin is super weak, but has attack dice of 2 against non-adjacent targets and only 1 against adjacent targets, which is kind of the same as a regular goblin, except a regular goblin can't hit targets that are farther away. And the regular goblin will roll 2 attack dice once you're up close and personal. The skeleton archer art it's interesting. It doesn't match their sculpt, but that's okay. It's still pretty cool on its own. And again, the different bows being represented here in the artwork, I love to see that. I love to see that difference. I love to see that distinction. And the skeleton is going to roll 2 attack dice and then 1 against adjacent targets. So really cool stuff. The old Against the Ogre Horde, and this may be one of the last comparisons I have to make, came with tokens. Garbage tokens instead of cards, which detailed the effects of different spells. And these spells were Dominate, Mind Lock, and Mind Blast. The presence of these tokens were basically to replace the cards. And in the new edition, Avalon Hill has agreed that cards are the superior way to go, replacing the tokens with proper Dread spell cards for Mind Lock, and we get multiples of those, as well as Mind Burst and Dominate. These are really cool cards with really, really cool artwork. I love the old artwork as well. The Chaos Sorcerers were definitely not to be messed with. They definitely liked to cast Fist every now and again. They did not skip Chest or Arm Day. They were not to be trifled with, and I appreciate that. Now, actually, they did change Mind Blast to become Mind Burst. That is still horrifying artwork, nonetheless. And Mind Lock, Avalon Hill, again, being very true to the message being conveyed on the old, right down to the hairstyle of the adventurer and the terrified look in their eyes. Let's see if the mechanical effects are intact. For the old, the Chaos Sorcerer and Defender both roll dice equal to their mind points. On the new, the attacker and defender each roll combat dice equal to their mind points. On the old, the defender will be frozen for 1 turn for each skull scored by the Chaos Sorcerer. On the new, for each skull scored by the attacker, the defender is frozen for 1 turn. If no skulls are scored against the defender, the spell has no effect. A little bit of a clarification there, but otherwise the terminology is pretty much the same. The mechanical effects are identical. The terminology is a little bit different between the cards for Mind Burst and Mind Blast, but otherwise the mechanics are again identical. They are the same. They work the same. And Dominate works the exact same as it used to as well, worded a little bit more clearly, perhaps, or at least to a different standard of clear. Don't get me wrong, I actually do like tokens, and I do like these tokens. I just believe in consistency. If you're going to go tokens, go all tokens. If you're going to go cards, don't stop and then do tokens. That's all of the cards except for the Druid spells. These have vastly different back of card artwork than they did with the old Mythic tier. The 2021 version of the Druid just had a picture of the Druid character, but everything seems to be the exact same with these, a little bit more clear on the language. Shapeshift, Pixie, and Life Force are all here, making the Druid a very powerful healer type character who is also able to stomp some enemies when they have the right sort of buff applied. To go over the rules of the arena combat really quick, the attacker and defender teams are built according to the maximum amount of attack that a given character can do. What is their most powerful attack? Every character that is entered into an arena battle is assigned a point value based on just their existence as well as the power of this attack. For example, the wizard gets 1 because he's a character, so all of the characters basically get 1 by default, plus another 5 because his most powerful attack is the genie if the genie were to roll all 5 skulls during an attack. So the wizard gets a point value of 6. Now the wizard's one example, and obviously if the wizard gets a staff or some magic item of some kind, the genie is actually still going to be the wizard's most powerful attack. So the wizard is going to be very, very difficult to change from his initial value of 6. The barbarian has an attack of 3 if he is using his base broadsword and rolls all 3 skulls on a combat die roll, plus the 1 that he is assigned for simply being a character. So that is a total of 4. The barbarian's total point value thusly is 4. Now, this is very important because if you are entering an arena battle where you and your opponent agree on a limit of, say, 10 points, then that's it. Your barbarian is contributing 4 points, your wizard is contributing 6, and 4 and 6 are 10. So you'd only have a wizard and a barbarian on the challenging team. Now, Zargon gets to choose what enemies will now add up to that same 10, and it actually may not be as much as you think. We'll go ahead and place all the greenskins down that come with Against the Ogre Horde. I am actually exceeding the 10-point value that's put by the heroes, though, in this example, because these orc archers are worth 4 by my reckoning, and the goblin archers are worth 3 apiece. So this is actually 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 points army on the right side. The defending team always goes first, and you'll mark any miniature that has been activated with one of these hourglass tokens. But in any case, the defending team will activate one of their miniatures, choose a miniature to activate, and then go through the motions of basically playing HEROQUEST with that miniature. They'll just activate one miniature, and then it will be the challenging team's turn to activate a miniature. The challenging team will activate their miniature, attack if they're able to. There are some bonus actions that can be achieved, and then play passes back to the defending team. Now, after the defending team has, in this example, moved their second miniature, activated their second miniature, and the challenging team has activated their second miniature, that is actually the challenging team's final miniature. So now, the defending team will activate all of the rest of their miniatures before the round ends. In this way, you can see that it's pretty important for the team that has fewer miniatures or fewer characters in their party to hurry up and bring the number of the opposing team's participants down as quickly as possible. Now, there are a couple of stipulations, a couple of details. If a member of a team ends their turn on top of a trophy tile, they can pick up that tile. And in this case, we've collected a +2 body point potion. But let's say you collected a skull instead. You can use this trophy tile to add 1 skull to your attack roll. Or you can use this shield tile to add 1 shield to your defend roll. That's for the monsters, actually. This is for the heroes. And so on. I think that this is a very elegant game. I think that there are a lot of opportunities for people to create tournaments around this arena style of play. Local tournaments, online tournaments, and there is even a team roster page that details how much movement squares, mind points, defend dice, body points, and attack dice each monster gets in the base game, as well as their ranged counterparts, and the Ogre Warrior, Ogre Champion, and Ogre Commander. Notably, the Ogre Lord is left off of this roster, presumably either because they didn't want to take up one of the last 2 spaces you had, or because they figured the Ogre Lord is just off limits, too powerful perhaps. Not one to engage in such frivolity. You could, of course, take the monsters from the other expansions and figure out what their total point values would be and add them right on to this chart. Now, I believe the time has come to take a look at the quest book and highlight some of the new content that is available in this expansion. We, of course, have the intro, insight into the Diogrusht people, and the contents of this expansion, including all the miniatures and tiles. We have instructions on the new tiles as well as how to read the map. And we have explanations of the new Pit of Darkness and supply crates, for which we don't have tiles. We have stipulations for being able to play it your way and either start at Quest 1, which is the Tournament Gauntlet, or skip right to Quest 4, Infiltrating the Fortress of Ogres, which is the original Quest 1 in the Classic Edition of Against the Ogre Horde. This is acknowledging the existence of that Classic Edition, and I love to see that. We get official rules included for unthreatened movement, large monsters, and now multi-phase enemies. A multi-phase enemy is a powerful foe who does not die or is not removed from the board when their body points reach 0, but instead their stats completely change and they are revived up to their full new body point value. It's essentially the second phase of a boss fight. We also have ranged enemies, bone weapons, ogre mercenaries, animal allies, and this expansion's take on mind points, which especially becomes important with these expansions since mind points aren't really paid attention to in the original HeroQuest. In the game system, I should say. We have an explanation of the Dread Sorcerer spells Mind Lock, Dominate, and Mind Burst, and examples given for how they work. And then we actually have clear, concise, and complete rules on the World's End tournament. Whoever wrote these rules specifically has my admiration. This is how you write instructions to a new game system. It covers solo combatants, finding treasure in the tournament, death in the tournament, incomplete tournament quests, trophy tiles, explanations for the different kinds of trophy tiles, and how to play the tournament outside of quests. Again, a great explanation on how to determine your team power and how to set up your tournament for play. There is a monster versus monster variant, which is explained, and finally, the optional rule of player safeguards. We get an example HeroQuest World's End tournament team roster, which I love. I would actually love to buy a pad of these physically, so I really hope that it's okay to take this and photocopy a bunch of them and not sell them, but I really would like to see a PDF of this online, actually. It would be really great if Avalon Hill could supply us with a PDF of exactly this team roster, maybe one that's even blank and just lets us fill in all of our values ourselves so that we have enough room to put all of our different heroes and monsters that we would like to have for sanctioned tournaments. That would be really, really cool, Avalon. Please consider it. On the very next page, we get a message from Mentor and then the quest map guide before finally getting to the Tournament Gauntlet. This is Quest 1 in this new expansion, and this is actually handled in a way that I didn't consider. We have waves of monsters, so not only do we have the arena mode being played out for this first quest, but we actually have waves. Yeah, in the first quest, we have Wave 1, which consists of 4 orcs and a goblin. We have Wave 2, which consists of a dread warrior, 2 skeletons, and 2 zombies. And Wave 3, which is just an abomination who is going to get completely, absolutely wrecked. Except this abomination is the spawn of the pit, which is a multi-phase monster. Now, a lot of you are probably thinking what I thought, that this ogre somehow was going to be the spawn of the pit, but no, it's actually going to be this fishy fellow, and I couldn't be happier for him, you know? He's living his best life, well, until he dies his best death, which is also going to happen because in tournaments, that's what happens. A warrior's death. Now, I warned you that there were going to be spoilers. Zargon's not supposed to warn the heroes that this is a multi-phase monster while they're fighting him. Quest 2 is called Proven Worthy, and the instructions for Zargon is to see the World's End team roster on page 17 of this book and build a team of defenders. Doralf must be one of the monsters on the defender team. See his statistics below. Yeah, and it just reminds us of what Doralf's actual statistics are. He is a named character. And finally, Quest 3, Glory and Gold, which utilizes this tournament system one more time. Gruzbella the Confident this time is your foe, and not only is she a multi-phase monster, she has more than 2 phases. She starts Gruzbella the Confident, then becomes Gruzbella the Determined, and from there becomes Gruzbella the Reckless. We finally get to Quest 4, which is infiltrating the Fortress of Ogres, and again, starts off with this awesome outside tile, taking up most of the corner section of the board, and we have stone doors that we can open to get into the fortress, one of 3 different ways. We have a lot of ways to complete this first quest, but it's not overwhelming. It's actually a lot more contained than I've seen a lot of other quests be, although it is still very much quite a deadly quest with dread warriors all over the place, abominations, and lots of opportunities for Zargon to place ranged enemies. I'm really glad they didn't dumb down the difficulty of the quest here. And in fact, things do get pretty tough from this point out, so that there are these player safeguards suggestions for Zargon to consider when building these devious, deadly quests for their heroes. We get a blank map at the very end of the quest book and instructions on how to design your own quest adventures. We also get all of the icon artwork needed to be able to place these icons onto the map and customize our adventure. And at 43 pages, the Against the Ogre Horde quest book is complete. 44 pages, counting the back cover, of course. And that is my complete unboxing, overview, and comparison of Against the Ogre Horde. I hope that you found this information educational or useful in some way, or found the video entertaining, my brave hero and evil wizard player friends alike. I hope to see you in the next video, and you can expect there to still be more Ogre Horde content as we play through some rounds of the tournament. Perhaps solo, perhaps against some guests. Until then, brave heroes, thank you very much for watching. Comment anything you'd like down below, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Until next time, onward.